Hello, this is Clint with Wagner Energy Services. You're listening to the Local Energy Podcast.
Wade, I am so excited to see you on camera today. It's been, I think, like maybe a week, maybe two.
I think I skipped out last week.
What have you been up to? I've just been nothing but chasing kids lately. So
Well, I was going to say it's spring break week, so it's funny, like I'm the only one in town. So I'm working, I got a rig going, and we're actually like running casing right now. So we hopefully we'll be pumping cement tonight, put this thing to bed, get a few days off. But my wife and my oldest are taking like a senior trip deal down to Orlando with 5 of her friends and their moms. And then my youngest just left for a dance convention in Baltimore. My boy is down in New Orleans for a mission trip. So I'm just hanging out.
man, I'm kind of jealous. So right now, like I got a 3-year-old, a 6-year-old. They're
Okay.
both under the weather. It's beautiful out. It's in the 90s in California, right? It's in the
Okay.
90s, and it's March when we're recording this.
It's coming to Oklahoma. It's supposed to be 94, like tomorrow
Yeah.
or the day after.
It's beautiful. The beaches are great. I mean, I drove down to our office yesterday. I took the long route down the 101 just to like look. I mean, it is like it's perfect. It's like summer, and summer's my favorite season for no other reason than
Okay.
just, it's good. But the mosquitoes are coming out a little earlier than I like. But
When my family leaves, there's like a mild state of depression that hits in because I'm so used to like doing baseball and lacrosse and like just always having all of these things to do. And I go home and the dogs are there and they're Amy's dogs. They
yeah,
miss her so bad. And I like look at Chase and Chase looks at me and I'm like, all right, man, you're not helping me out here. They're much less active. They follow her all around the house when she's home, and with me, they're just kind of
yeah,
bored. So,
that's all
gotta
right.
fill the time.
It's good. Well, enjoy the time you got. So our guest today, Leigh, I need to introduce you. We have Leigh Haas from Mockingbird Land Land Services. Sorry, I'm already getting it wrong,
It's
but
okay. It's okay.
Leigh, I'm excited to talk with you today. I think the first time we talked, you were rushing to the airport
Yes, this is
and you
cool.
told me in like 30 seconds what you did for a living. I had no idea what any of it meant. We touched base again. I met you at NAPE in person, which was great, along with a couple of your people that you work with, which has been fantastic to just kind of, get to know your circle a bit. But so, yeah, excited to learn about you and what you're doing, your background and all that. But the first question that we're going to start asking everyone that comes on the show is, did we actually land on the moon? That's the first question I'm going to ask you.
Yes, we did.
We did. Okay. All right. All right.
I did. I said I did. No, we did.
I'm firmly aligned with Leigh on this. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well,
okay.
I definitely believe. Yes, I think we definitely landed on the moon.
All right. Perfect. That's all we need to
I'm a
know.
Kennedy fan.
All right.
Hey,
Next
I love you.
question. Give me a little bit of background in your oil and gas world. Let's kick things off here.
Yeah. So I started in politics, working for the House of Representatives in Mississippi in Jackson at the Capitol, and then I worked for a United States congressman, and then wound up he lost, and then I transferred or transitioned into land and oil and gas, which is kind of funny because most people I'm learning now it's usually the other way around. It's oil and gas and politics, and everybody says I did it backwards. So I like started out in the gauntlet in the lion's den with the politicians, and then wound up in land services doing, I was hiring all of these landmen and these right of way agents to buy all of the leases and the land rights to build these pipelines. And I'd like to say I started a business in an invisible industry because until Landman came out, nobody even knew what this industry was. And even with Landman, it's still like technically, if you want to get all, specific, it's not really that accurate to what the actual profession does. So outside of that show and its cultural references, nobody even knows what this is. I didn't know what it was when I started in it. I got trained in it for about 10 years, learning that way.
Gotcha. So when you started in politics, what were you doing there? What was
I was
kind of your day to day?
I was a legislative aide for the House of Representatives.
Okay.
He's now the governor of Mississippi. He was the lieutenant governor when I worked with him. So I've seen everybody like grow up as, for lack of a better term. So I was in the chamber every day during session, watching how bills got passed, watching how legislation gets moved throughout the chambers and throughout the chain, the levels. I saw how bills died. So it's kind of it's a weird like combination that, I know how regulatory works for oil and gas now because I came from that world.
Gotcha.
And then I ran a congressional campaign for a 22-year United States congressman. So
Wow.
yeah, ran a congressional campaign before I could legally rent a car. It's
So
That sounds like early 2000s oil field. It's like
yeah,
you're young and willing to take on responsibility. It's
Mhm.
like, here you go, have it all,
Yeah.
whatever you want.
Well, he called me. His name's, he was a Congressman Gene Taylor. He called me and he said, if you can move home from Jackson in 4 days, I'm running for Congress again, and I want you to run my campaign. So I packed my stuff and I never looked back.
Oh my gosh.
And then
that's awesome.
he got beat, and he wound up shipping. He worked for an overseas shipping company in oil. So we laugh that, I went to work in land, building all these natural gas pipelines, and he's shipping
Right.
it overseas. So we laughed afterwards that we became, enemies, like competitors,
Yeah.
shipping it overseas, and I'm over here trying to get it out the ground.
I had never really thought about that overlap between, I guess, politics and land work. But now that you mention it, I mean, I'm like,
It's
just the
all the
land
same.
guys I know, how much relationship and, communication and all that stuff's required. I could see there's quite a bit of overlap there.
Yeah, I said that when all this is successful, when it's all said and done, I will have
Right.
a subsidiary called Landmen and Lobbyists. And because I said, if I've seen some of these people, they go to someone's house, they talk them into selling them their property, and then they get invited back to the wedding anniversaries and birthday parties. And I'm like, if they can do that with the most, aggressive landowners, I can
Right.
imagine what they can do with legislation during session. Think about it. There's a element they could talk the politicians into.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, they're both very relational, right? I mean, I
It's
think
all
everything is,
transferable.
but yeah, it's
Right.
all, a lot of that. And, scrolling on X, right? The landmen they're always dealing with something like they're going to the courthouse or whatever. What's
They're
that?
the
There's a,
loudest and most interesting follows by far.
oh, they
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
stories they have are just amazing.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best part is that people have no idea the stories you hear over the years.
And the other thing too, the stories that landmen tell are so relatable because especially like they'll tell you how people operate and how they think about mineral rights and all that stuff. And you're like, man, that is just people in general, but you're actually saying the quiet part out loud. And I love that, So
Yeah.
it's good to understand the psychology behind it. So I started out in politics. And I guess a question I have on that is obviously politics and oil and gas are super related, like you said, but did that teach you, I guess, the part of your job where you're going out and getting landmen to go get the, the rights and all that? Did you learn the workflow from doing that, or did you need to go, I guess, work for another company to kind of learn how it all fit together?
Yeah. So no, I had to, I went and worked for other companies, and they had to teach me basically everything. That I didn't know anything about this industry. I knew about pipelines, but I didn't know the intricacies of what happens before the pipe goes in the ground. So
Right.
So I had to learn, and it really, so like my second project ever in the industry was a 600-mile, 5-state FERC regulated natural gas pipeline. We put 200 land agents on across 5 states, and you don't know, there's no training manual for that. So like I'm talking, we went from like 90 to 350 employees in a matter of a couple of weeks. There's
Dealing with that many personalities must just be
Yeah, and so
a huge headache.
here I am, like I'm fresh into this industry, and I am literally negotiating pay rates and job scopes and locations with like these samurai negotiators. I
Right.
didn't even realize it. Like, so yeah, I've always been, obviously I started in politics because I am good with talking with people. Well, I wound up like for the next 10 years getting trained by like these negotiating masters.
Right.
And so it kind of like just it all they taught me a lot more than I ever could have dreamt. And they really they teach you about relationships, and then they teach you how to listen really too, and you start to pick up things from little cues here and there that you didn't realize was even happening.
Right.
Wow. I mean, I didn't think about a negotiation part. I would feel, I guess I need to know a little bit more about that. So let's start there. But like, what are you negotiating in these contracts? Like, obviously there's a dollar amount somewhere. There's always something like that. But what are the other terms that you would be looking at?
So with the land agents,
Yeah.
so like during recruiting them, you got to figure out what's their skill set, what they're really good at. So a lot of them, they're either acquisitioned, so they buy the easements and they purchase the negotiation for the actual property. Then there's the title agents. that are, the ones that are really good at, researching the deeds and the land records. Some of them, they have to have patent to present experience. So, and then some of them, they're in different sectors of the energy, industry. So, you really learn, what somebody's good skill, their skill sets are. And, you learn how to call a bluff, and you learn, um, sometimes people will want to take a job just because they want to take a job, and they might not be that good at that particular skill set. So, it's you learn, you really become like a master bullshit caller. Really,
Yeah.
Can I
Yeah.
curse on here? Sorry.
I'd imagine so. And you're probably not meeting all these people in person, right? Out of those 350
No,
employees,
because you're doing it across multiple energy sectors in
yeah,
different states all over the country.
gotcha. So this was several years ago. I'm assuming before Zoom was really as popular. I mean, right now we're meeting on Riverside. We're doing a podcast on video, recording the whole thing. The technology is just so great now. So, Zoom wasn't a thing. You're probably doing most of this over the phone, right? And so at least I'd assume. So how are you? I mean, those conversations, I know phone calls can be some of the most tense moments, right? I like meeting people in person because I don't know, they can run away, I suppose. But like
Yeah.
if we got to talk about something over the phone, it's really easy to be a little more short. Maybe not your full personalities coming through. You just hang up the phone. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But very highly effective. So like, learning to talk with people like that, I can tell, like, even when I was talking to you on the phone, you're very calm, very confident about it.
Thank you.
What are some of the challenges though of like, of managing people over the phone? Because the company I work for, we're fully remote, and that's kind of recent. That's since COVID. So, doing it before, like, how's that work in the oil field?
Yeah. So, I think if practice for one. So, and a lot of times the land agents, it would take them 4 or 5 hours one way to get to a landowner's house. So they would be like, 6, 7 o'clock at night by themselves. This was, the GPS wasn't really even a thing still. So they were calling me. I was the one that they would talk to that would like keep them company while they were going to do
Gotcha.
these things. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of, I guess it's really just from experience through that kind of way.
Okay.
And that's when I would learn so much about them and their families, their regular lives, when they were looking for new work. And then they were the ones telling me like, oh, well, so-and-so is about to build a pipeline here, or we're going to build a solar farm there. Like I have said this from the beginning, they're the secret sauce. They're the secret to everything. They trust me and I trust them. So it works out. I learn more from them than they could ever learn from me. I know that, that they're a pain in the butt too, especially when they're looking for work, their jobs their project's about to come to an end. So they're calling sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, just to see, hey, you got something or XYZ. And, I've told a couple of them, they're getting a little up there and they're wanting to retire. And I said, I'll be damned if y'all retire before I get to fire you at least once. I'm like,
That's funny.
For 10 years, you have blown my phone up and driven me crazy for work. I said, and now that I've started my own outfit, you better, I will kill you before I get to fire you at least once.
Well,
There's a great
go
book. There's a great book that I read. Picked it up from there's a museum in Midland. It's called An Oil Scout in the Permian Basin. It was written in the 60s.
Okay.
And it's an old book, and I love reading older books because the language in them is so much more dynamic, I feel, than what we're writing today, right? Like they just use words and like sentence structures that we don't get. But
Yeah.
one of the big takeaways I had was that the landmen had their ear to the ground on everything. Like when landmen met up, it was like, that's where you wanted to be. That's the room. That's where you want to get coffee with everybody, because you learn so much about the industry. They knew everybody. And I think obviously that's still continuing today.
Yeah, like they know which projects are about to get shut down. They know which
Yeah.
ones are about to kick off. They know who's been fired recently. They know who's not doing their. It is a networking. They are networking ninjas. They really are.
That's cool. Well, if anyone needs a good read, that's one that I'd recommend. But
Yeah.
Wade, I think I cut you off there. I just want to make sure I didn't ignore a question you had.
Well, no, I mean, just on the technical side of things, one of the things that I always thought about with pipelines that would be a huge challenge is like, you kind of have this lay, right? Like where you expect the pipeline to go, and you're negotiating kind of all along the way. But then all of a sudden, I mean, I would imagine there's some landowners where, regardless of what you're willing to do or how good you are at selling and negotiating, they just say there's zero chance. Like in that instance, I mean, I imagine you have to pivot. You have to, I mean, do you go back and have to renegotiate with a lot of different people
Yeah,
along
yeah.
that way?
So yeah, because anytime you see like there's a potential reroute, or that's usually why there's some really bullheaded, which rightfully so. In some instances, I understand, so there's some instances where you have to do reroutes because the landowners won't budge, or then you've got to get into the eminent domain and the condemnation side of
Right.
it. But there's always challenges, and there's even instances where so the stories from the field I've started compiling with the land agents, and I'm calling it the Right of Way Chronicles.
Mhm.
And it's all these fascinating stories that people don't think about or even know happen. So I've had a couple of land agents. They met with some landowners who slept with a baby deer in their bed.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Think about it. Like they're going up to knocking on somebody's door to talk to them about buying their land, they're getting property access, and they learn that they're sleep with a baby.
Yeah.
Like
They just have a deer in the
your-
house.
in your
Yeah.
bed. In the bed.
Yeah. That seems normal.
So like think about it. Who would ever dream that would happen? Like
It's like a
drugs-
dog replacement.
I got some stories for
right.
you. Then I had another who the woman was a gorilla mater. She had actual primates in her home. So they're like, these are land agents that have to go.
It's got to be illegal. There's zero chance
Like,
it's legal.
you don't, and then the ones that like get chased off of a property with a sawed-off shotgun, like.
Well,
Yeah.
okay.
See, that's more normal to me. Like the shotgun
more
sounds
expected.
normal.
But the prime mater learned that wasn't a joke. It was a real thing.
That's
That's a
terrifying.
crazy
And that's
LinkedIn
just a
headline
couple
right
of
there.
big examples, but it's like I hear stuff all the craziest. Like
Yeah,
you
that's,
never like, think about it. You're going to buy trying to get some property access, even if it's like survey permission, and this person's got a
Yeah.
whole ass gorilla in her.
Yeah.
Goes to show you never know what's going on behind some of these doors, right? Like,
Yeah.
No,
I
and
mean,
that's so
what was that
fascinating.
documentary? There's a Netflix documentary, like the tiger something. I don't remember, but the guy had all the
Oh,
animals and
Tiger King. That's in
Yeah.
Oklahoma, man.
yeah. All right. Well, I mean,
Joe
listen.
Exotic. I mean, I got my picture
Forgot
like in
about
high
that.
school. I got my picture taken with those tigers, and like at the time, nobody thought it was like anything crazy because we
Yeah.
were the Norman High Tigers, right?
Yeah.
So like, what are you gonna do as a senior? You're gonna go get your picture taken with the tigers, and I mean, like, you're hanging all over this tiger, and nobody thought at the time, like, yeah, maybe this thing would eat us. But after watching that documentary, I was like, yeah, what were my parents thinking, like taking us out there? To
No
go do
kidding. But even then, I mean, look,
Tiger
I'm
King,
just
that's what it
surprised.
was.
I still don't understand how no one caught on sooner. Like the guy's feeding tiger. Like, how much meat do you have to go buy at Costco to feed your
No,
tiger?
hold on. No, it's like a completely legit thing here. Like,
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
tell you, like, it's out in Tuttle, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like, the craziest headline that I saw, okay, so I was drilling, we had rigs going in Grady County, which is right by Tuttle. And in the late teens, maybe like 15, maybe it was like 2016, 17, 18, somewhere around there, a tornado came through. And they were actually like, there was an alert that went out that was like a tornado hit. I think I can't remember what it was called.
No.
I can't remember the little zoo it was called. But I mean, like, there's tigers and all that stuff there. And they were like, one of the animals is unaccounted for. And it was like, beware if you go outside. It was like, oh my gosh, like, a tornado hit the
panther
little
on the loose or something?
enclosures. Yeah. And I was like, I literally texted my guys. It was like, hey, just want to make sure you guys saw that, there's a containment fence down, and there might be like I can't remember if they said it was a tiger or whatever it was.
Yeah,
And I
so
was like,
think about that. That's one example, and then think about you're in Appalachia in the middle of the mountains in West Virginia,
Yeah.
and there's this like a baby deer sleeping in the
Oh yeah.
middle
Yeah.
of the bed. Like it's you don't think
Yeah.
about it's like
I
the
saw some
hotel
crazy
and
stuff in
you
West
make
Virginia too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Man, you're bringing back all kinds of memories. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's great.
Man, all right. So anyways, we've got some funky pipelines going through because we can't really, get all the rights and all that. But I mean, but at the end of the day, like there's got to be like a certain tolerance, right? Because I mean, you can't have a zigzag pipeline. I mean, let's be realistic. It's not good for the it's not good for the flow either.
It's it's not very efficient,
Yeah.
but you can't, sometimes you'd be surprised at the lengths they'll go to get it to
Yeah.
construction.
Man,
I mean,
crazy.
sometimes you have to go completely around just one landowner.
Yeah. Okay. Well, bring us up to speed on your current venture, which is Mockingbird.
Yeah.
I know this is something that you're real excited about and you've been working on for quite some time.
Yeah.
And having conversations with some great companies and meetings at NAPE. I mean, all these cool things you got. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I started this about, let's see, is at the end of, so about a year ago, March 25th of last year is when I actually launched. So
Wow.
coming up on a year.
Yeah.
It's been the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it's the most exciting and liberating thing, to be your own boss. It's kind of, I like to say I fire myself about 15 times a day, but but my dog's my board of directors. But it's been, the outpour of support and just the feedback in the industry has been overwhelming but amazing. You get to a point where you want to just make your own, clear your own path, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I had a lot of support from the land professionals that have built up this network with over the last decade, and they were the ones that were basically like, why don't you start your own outfit? Go do your own thing. We're going to come work with you. And I'm like, y'all are crazy. And now, you have these experiences and you have this, you have these accomplishments over your years, and you realize like, okay, enough's enough. I'm going to do it for myself, and I'm going to do it with the people that help get me to this point. So that's where I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so right now you're actively looking for, projects that you can participate in and get those people to
Yes.
engage, those
Yes. So
landmen
I
to
tell
come on with you.
when people are like, what are you looking for? Who's your ideal clientele? I say, look, if you have to cross private property and you're building any kind of energy project, any kind of, even if it's road or construction, these bridge expansions,
Mm-hmm.
you have to cross private property, and you need
Gotcha.
land agents to do that. You need landmen to do that.
And does that work for so obviously, if you're drilling a new well, you probably need the same services, I would imagine, as doing a pipeline, right? So
Yeah,
it's
'cause
kind of fun. Okay.
It's all transferable.
Okay.
Like I started, during the Biden administration, we started doing solar and wind and carbon capture.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knew about renewables, but it's just these transferable skills. So instead of buying easements for natural gas pipeline, you're buying them for solar farm or wind turbines. So it's really, or it could be road transportation. Doesn't matter really.
Yeah. So obviously this profession will continue, right? There's always going to be the need for landmen. For those that might be listening to this saying like, hey, I want to get into the oil and gas industry. I'm in high school, I'm in college. There's likely a chance that they've had some sort of, I almost feel like landmen, like you grow up in the culture that has it. Like if you're in California, you're probably not thinking about it unless you're thinking Hollywood and then you want to go be on a TV show. But in this case, you've probably been around it, but what are some of the things that you would tell others to go do if they wanted to get into this as a career?
Yeah. So I would say right now is probably the opportune time for greener professionals or even ones that don't have experience to get involved, because this is the next big wave in natural gas. And what I try to tell people is, so like, say a solar farm, you can be on it for 7 months. These natural gas pipelines can last 7 to 10 years. So the age of, with remote work, shadowing the real big, the real experts has become a lot more difficult. However, with this next big boom in energy, and especially in natural gas, there's an opportunity for people to start fresh, and they can train while working under, with these major natural gas lines, to me, and in my opinion.
Sure.
Okay. Because there's not a lot of training opportunity. And I think there's a few of us that are trying to figure out how to promote that, outside of paying an arm and a leg for some of it. So the way to really learn from the experts, I think, is the time to do it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I would say that we're definitely moving into, I think, a more energy. I don't know. The energy is needed more and more every day, it seems. Wade and I talk about AI, and I read something today, like $200 a compute on Claude is actually burning through, thousands of dollars worth of energy.
I saw the same.
It's
Yeah,
insane.
and I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
yeah, so it's heavily subsidized because they're going after growth, and they're going after, okay, what's our real valuation? It's in the, multi-billions. It's crazy, but
Yeah.
so that need for energy is going to continue to kind of increase. And obviously it doesn't seem like mineral owners, they don't give up they don't just sell their mineral
No,
rights,
no, that's why there's
they sit
like
on them.
10
Yeah.
generations of wealth because
Yeah.
they don't give them up very easily.
Yeah.
And they're buying more and
Well,
more. The same ones are buying more and more.
yeah. Interesting with it seems like there's mineral owners that are like trying to buy more, and then there's also ones like you said that are out in the middle of nowhere that have a pet deer that are just kind of like happy with whatever income they get from it,
Yeah.
and they don't have to work, so or as
Yeah.
much. I don't know, is that seem to be the
Mailbox
case?
money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've got a small well up in Michigan, or I don't even know what it is. My father-in-law has this thing in Michigan, and he's like, "Here, look, it's yours." I still don't have the paperwork for it, but I did get a check, and it was $4.20, and I thought that
Oh
was
yeah.
kind of funny.
Look
So
at you, big. I
yeah,
mean,
I know,
I've
420.
sent out,
Yeah,
You and Elon, yeah.
man, what am I gonna
I've
do with
sent out
that money?
checks like
Like, yeah,
400,000. So maybe just keep holding on to it, Peter. You'll get there.
right.
You'll get to that $425,000 a month check.
You never know. That'd be a good one, man. Could you imagine? I
Look,
can't.
just
I really
hold,
can't.
hold it forever. We'll see.
Diamond
Love it.
hands. Here you go, Pete.
Yep, I'm good at that, if nothing else.
Yeah,
So,
when I got into this and I
cool.
started
Well,
sending out checks like that, I was just like, you had no idea what
that
kind
is
of money was
insane.
involved.
Yeah, we're talking numbers that I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking through that maybe as much as I should be. But we got to move it. Got to move the oil. Got to move the product. So we'll move to close here. But is there anything kind of lingering that you'd want to share, and then we'll wrap it up?
No, I mean, just, if anybody needs needs my services or needs any type of consulting in the, from the land side, or even if somebody's trying to find out how to get into the industry, we've got these networks and I'm trying to use it to help everyone in the process. So just reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, trying to get involved in Twitter and all the other ones. I'm like an older millennial, so it's still a work in progress, but I see the benefit and I'm working at it because watching people like you, Peter, are inspiring me to get better at it and really, try to network and use my skill sets to help everybody involved. So,
well, look, I can tell you this: if I can sort of understand what y'all are doing, other people that are gonna like commit full tilt to it and get into it for a living. I mean, you can pull it off. I mean, this is just me trying to absorb and talk to great people. So, Leigh, thank you so much for coming on today. I'll have all your contact info, in the show notes here. Wade, excited to catch up with you again. This has been fantastic, and we'll see y'all again next week. Thank you.
See y'all later. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.